Hey guys, good morning or afternoon or whenever you're watching this. As always, let's start by getting logged into Clever. So, for your warm up icebreaker this morning, I want you to tell me something fun or interesting that you did over the Thanksgiving break. I included these two images here because I did not get to see my family and neither did my partner. So, we did a very non conventional Thanksgiving, including making a Crunchwrap Supreme, like from Taco Bell, yeah, but with Thanksgiving food. And it was delicious. So, what was something fun or interesting that you did? So this is lesson 26. We are already at week 14. We have the next 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks after we come back from the winter break, we are continuing to think about patterns and the periodic table. So some reminders, the second 6 week grades were posted on Monday, the November 30th. Yeah, that's it. And so just be aware that those grades are cumulative. So if you did not pass or did not like your grade, that means during when that was posted, you still have plenty of time to get it up to whatever you want it to be. So continue to check assignments for grades, for comments, for questions, for returns. Check Edpuzzles to make sure that if you completed it or if you think you completed it on Edpuzzle, make sure that that grade gets uploaded to Google Classroom. It's only uploaded if you've completed the entire thing. Please make sure that you're trying to come to class. I think that if I were to do a study and compare the grades of students who came to class, came to the live sessions versus those who didn't, there probably is a positive trend connecting those two. It's not for everyone, but I at least have the ability to see and talk to you and see you. So please try to make an effort to come. And remember our resources, remember our expectations, and let's make sure we are here to do our best and be our best. So this week, like I said, we're talking about is more information about how the periodic table is organized and some of the other patterns that exist. So there's one assignment that is going to be posted after you, or is posted, that you should complete after you do this lesson 26. After lesson 27, there are two other assignments that will be coming your way. Again, remember always the pattern is before you start the week, you should do the preview video, then the lesson, either live or this recording, then you do the assignment. Then lesson 27, then the assignments. So let's start by opening up the periodic table. And let's give this a shot. So last week, or a week and a half ago, I guess, lesson 25, we talked about where groups and particular groups of elements are. So do you remember, is this a metal, a non-metal, or a metalloid? Great. So it is a metal. Remember that this green dividing line right here that's the metalloids. That's the stepping stones that separate the metals, which is the left part of the periodic table, from our non-metals, which is this right corner up here. All right. So this is titanium. It is a transition metal, so it's a metal. All right. What about this one? Bromine over here. Great. So since it is to the right of the metalloid steps, it is a non-metal. Bromine is a halogen, which is a non-metal. All right. And there's just another imagery to kind of better show you this grouping. So we started looking, and I told you about some patterns on the periodic table relating to the atomic structure, but I want to show you that today. So as we look at some of these atoms and elements and where they are on the periodic table, I need you to pay attention specifically to the placement and structure of the electrons. So if I show you this here, this is a group of elements. I want you to tell me, what do they have in common? What is something that is the same between all four of those? Great. So same question. Take a look at these three. What do these three structurally, looking at their Bohr models, what do these three atoms have in common? All right, and then what about these two? What do these two atoms, if we're looking at their structures, two very different atoms, there is something that they have that is the same. Can you identify that? Great. So some of you guys might have noticed is that the elements in those columns, so we looked at this first one here, they each have different numbers of masses, they're different elements, they have different numbers of electrons, different numbers of protons, right? Their structures all look different, but if you take a look specifically, there is always one electron in its outer shell. If you go to the next column we looked at, I believe was this beryllium, magnesium, calcium. If we look at this column, it has 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2 electrons in each of their outer shells. The next one we looked was at phosphorus and nitrogen. They each have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 electrons in their outer shells. So based on that, what does the pattern tell you, or what does the column tell you about the elements in that column? Great. So what it tells you are what we call valence electrons. These groups, these columns, will tell you how many electrons are in the outside shell. So every element that is in the first column on the periodic table has one valence electron. Every element in the second column has 2 electrons in its outside shell. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. If you don't believe me, count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, or a full valence shell. Helium only has 2 because its first shell can only hold 2, but it's still full, so that's why it's in that column. Okay? So the key is with these groups, these are the vertical columns. They are in the same family or group because they have similar properties. And the reason that they have similar properties is because of it has the same number of valence electrons. And valence electrons, this is a term that you need to remember, are the electrons that are found in the outside shell. All right, so this middle group, the transition metals, they're really, really weird. And then the ones below are even weirder. So the major columns that you're counting are everything else. So 1, 2, skip all these, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and you can predict and tell me how many valence electrons an element has in that column just because it is in that column. So along the same lines, take a look at this series of elements. What is similar about these atoms based on their Bohr models and their structure? Great. So what about these two? What do these two have in common? So if you notice, as you go across the row, we are starting to see that, or we can see, everyone is noticing that, as I go across, I add one more electron. You're absolutely right. But if we're looking at what is similar in each row, what is similar is the number of circles or shells around the nucleus. So every element in that lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon row, they all have 1, 2 shells. If we go down to the next one, they all have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All of these have 3 shells. Down here, these have 4. So can you explain to me, what does the row tell us, or what is the pattern related to the row? Right, so as you go down each row, you add another shell. So every element that is in this row has 1 shell. Everyone that's in the second row has 2 shells. The third row, 3. The fourth row, 4. We get the idea? So these periods, these are all elements in a row. They have the same number of electron shells. As you go across from right to left, you're going to add 1 more electron to it in that outer shell, because that's what we just talked about with the groups. These periods, in the number of shells, we're just talking about the number of energy levels or circles around the nucleus. And again, to simplify it, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, actually 7 rows. So the largest atoms could have up to 7 shells. All right, so what atom am I if I have 3 valence electrons? So 1, 2, third column, and 2 shells. So the second row. What atom am I? So you are boron. Again, if we're in the second, has 2 electron shells, that means it's in the second row, 1, 2, so it's got to be somewhere in this row. And then has 3 valence electrons, which means it's in the third column. So 1, 2, 3. Boron is the correct answer. So let's try this one. It has 8 valence electrons, so it's in the 8th, the far right shell, and it's far right column, and then it has 5 electron shells. That means it's in the 5th row. So what atom is this? All right, so if it is in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row, it's somewhere over here. I have to go across to column 8. 1, 2, skip all of these. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Your correct answer is xenon. Okay, so what you're going to be doing today is a periodic table scavenger hunt. The assignment that goes with this lesson is going to have you answer questions about being able to gather information purely from the periodic table and going and finding different elements and different properties based on patterns, based on characteristics of different elements and groups of elements. Okay, making sure to remember the row tells you the number of shells, the column tells you the number of valence electrons or electrons in the outside shell. That's the only assignment that you guys have for today. And it, again, will be posted, or it is posted already. Make sure that you watch this lesson first before you go and try that. If you are getting really anxious because you are worried about getting them right or wrong, this really is just an opportunity for you to get practice finding stuff on the periodic table. Okay. So if you have any questions, now's the time to leave me a question and I can get back to you about it. Otherwise, I will see you in lesson 27 later this week. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.